Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you to our COVID-19 Widowed Resource Program. And today we are discussing sleep and rest. Why do we have trouble with sleep? Sort of the signs and symptoms, like what happens to us essentially when we don't get enough sleep. Some tips to help with inducing and sort of staying asleep, and some relaxation techniques. And so, personally, I was going to share sleep was definitely one of the hardest things for me in my widowed experience. I still sometimes, almost 11 years later, struggle with sleep and have to take my own advice. But I know my husband died at home and he died in our room. And so that was not a place for me that I could sleep. And once I admitted that, and found a new location, at least I was giving myself a chance. So with that being said, it's whatever our expectations are of like what we should be doing to go to sleep. Sometimes you just got to give yourself some grace and try something new. Sleep seems to be the time when our minds think it's like the time to solve all of our problems. I know mine certainly does. It seems to want to solve everything in the world, including my own things. And so I feel like sleep and grief are just butting heads all the time. So I'm really glad to be here today. I have to go in, I mean, being a nurse, I have to go into a little bit of why the heck do we have trouble with sleep? What happens is when we lost our person, the sympathetic nervous system in us, the fight or flight, is really activated, and all of our stress hormones are released, and we have lots of chatter in our brain that we can't shut down. You know, everything is increased. Everything is, you know, running faster. Our heart rates are running faster. Our breathing is faster. Our metabolism is faster, and we're not eating usually very well. So all of those things can make getting to go to sleep very, very, very difficult. Especially when you're constantly chronically running on fumes and you're chronically having those stress hormones affecting your body. For a lot of people during grief, we get a lot of ruminating thoughts on the what ifs. You know, what would we have done differently, or those kinds of things. And I can say personally, I did a lot of that. And I definitely have made some progress in the what ifs and the guilt, because I know I made the best decision at the times I was presented with them, and I did the very best I could. And that has definitely helped with my ruminating thoughts, especially around sleep and at night. So I thought I would throw that out there. You know, you do the very best you can every single day leading up to that day. And I know, you know, with the information I had, I made the best decisions possible. So our people did too. You know, with the information that they had, they made the decisions the best way they thought they could. So really common things that can happen with a lack of sleep, and I'm sure everybody will identify with this. We get really forgetful, sometimes confused. We have that brain fog that we get in grief, can get even worse when we're not getting any sleep. We can get really irritable, have like a really low tolerance to anything, and feel very overstimulated at times. Concentrating can be really difficult when we are chronically fatigued. We can have a really short attention span, and also decision making can be really hard. And I thought it was interesting last time we met together, Michelle was talking about decision making and how we need a lot of sleep to make good decisions. And we need to make decisions when we're at our best. And you can sort of get into this vicious cycle of, I'm not getting sleep, I can't make the decision, and it can sort of go over and over. And I thought it was interesting that in our last meeting, she talked about how those making decisions can be already so difficult just with our grief, let alone with, a continual lack of getting enough rest, good sleep. Um, let's see. So I was put together not only some tips for everybody on kind of how we can induce a good sleep, but also ways in which we can create an environment that can help our body feel more tired and maybe help us be a little bit more successful at getting some good sleep. So for some people, you may work nights or you previously worked nights, for example. So sleeping at night now, if you're not working nights, can be really difficult. So getting sleep when it's your best time to sleep. Eventually you'll get on a schedule. There's lots of literature out there that says don't nap. Napping is terrible for sleep. Yes, if you were to nap all day, you're not going to sleep at night. But power naps really do work for a lot of people. Even a 20-minute, I'm going to close my eyes for 20 minutes right now. And I've been known personally in the past, I'll set an alarm for 20 minutes, especially if I feel really tired during the day. That way I know I'm not going to sleep for hours and hours and then be up that following night. So, limiting your naps, but I would take them. A bedtime routine. We're going to talk about this in our discussion, but establishing a bedtime routine is so important because it helps your body and your mind know what to expect, and it can help establish, especially our minds, into knowing, okay, I'm approaching the time, we're doing this activity, we always do this before we go to sleep. Kind of in order, some of you on our other calls, we've talked about those daily rituals that can really help with our grief journey. A bedtime routine is a daily ritual that can really help our mind settle a little bit and get some sleep. Because what happens is when we can and use some of these relaxation techniques, some of these routines, it stimulates our parasympathetic nervous system. So the opposite of the sympathetic or fight or flight, it stimulates our parasympathetic nervous system, inducing rest and relaxation. And we want more of that because grief is hard work. This is really, really hard work that all of you are doing. So we need to do our very best to take care of ourselves and sort of help our bodies get that relaxation state that we need. So I always say a bedtime routine, I personally, it's like 30 minutes before I go to bed. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I'm like, forget it. I want to watch this one episode till I fall asleep on the couch. And I say, forget the routine. But in general, like a 30-minute routine, and it can be very, very easy. We can talk about that sort of as we're wrapping up the recording section of the call after we go through some of the tips on how to easily put together a bedtime routine, especially when you're already tired and have so much on your mind. The last thing we do for some reason is take care of ourselves. So all of you can probably give each other great tips on how to get better sleep and rest and relax, but then we forget to do those things ourselves for us. So I'm just here to remind you about them because you probably know a lot of them. some kind of exercise during the day, if even if it's just a walk to the mailbox, but just something during the day to move your body is really helpful. Getting a little bit of sun, even if it's, 15 minutes outside, can really help our body and stimulate that part of the nervous system that it knows, okay, it's time to relax. And exercise in general will make you more tired at night. Definitely a better, benefit of our exercise. Before bed, it's always good, avoiding sugar, caffeine, lots of alcohol. All of those are stimulants to our body and make us want to stay awake. One thing I do that's really, really helpful, especially we talked about those sort of ruminating thoughts or solving the world's problems at night. I keep like a composition notebook that I stole from one of my kids' backpacks years ago. And I just write whatever the thought is in my head, I write it down. Like, okay, I can leave it here for right now, and I can leave it on this paper, and I can either never go back to it or I'm going to go back to it tomorrow. Whatever that thought is, whatever that problem is, but it allows my brain to stop focusing on it and thinking about it over and over. And I just leave it in that notebook. I close it up, and I will do that. I still do that to this day, with all kinds of things, even if they're not grief related, whatever it is keeping me up at night, that I'm worrying about. So that's one tip. Something that's also good to use that journal for is, a lot of us, when we lay down to like go to sleep, we have a lot of those pre-bedtime anxieties, those pre-bedtime fears, things we're angry about. Write them down. Say, you know what? I don't really want to pick them up, but if I have to pick them back up, I'll do it tomorrow. But right now, I'm going to leave them in this notebook. And the notebook can take care of them so that you can get some sleep. A lot of people have tried that I have, run across. You can take these tips, you can leave them here if it doesn't resonate with you. But one thing I've heard a lot of widowed people say is they will put a body pillow in the spot where their person used to lay. Stating benefits such as, if I roll over, it's something there instead of like an empty spot. It puts a little bit of weight on that side of the bed. If that doesn't sound good to you, don't do it. But I just thought I would throw that out there. That's something that's come up before in some other sleep stuff, and some people really, really like that idea. Other tips is, you're supposed to save the TV, like no TV in the bedroom. Telling your body, hey, this isn't where I go for entertainment. This isn't where I go to stay awake. No TV in the bedroom. If I'm going to watch TV, it's like out of my bed. Again, take it or leave it. Something to try if you're having a really hard time. Some people will, turn off the TV in their room, watch TV in another room, and then when they feel sleepy, go back to their room with no TV. So that's something to try. We definitely, speaking of our room, we want to create a room that is sleep inducing, like a really good environment. This is the time, I certainly did, where I bought myself like the softest sheets when I finally went back to my room, and a brand new bed furniture set. Like, I was like, I'm buying what I want, and I'm going to sleep like on a pillow in the softest sheets. And it really did help me. It changed up the environment for me because my husband was no longer there in that environment with me. So I thought, well, I'm going to pick out the $200 sheets he would have never let me buy because they're so soft. And I did things like that in my room to eventually get myself back into an environment where I could try to get some sleep. Um, Comfortable temperature, for me personally, that's like my air conditioner at 70 degrees, and I snuggle up with a bunch of really soft blankets. Um, Diffuser by your bed with some oils that help with sleep. We can get into that. Um, Blackout curtains. Some people do blackout curtains, eye pillows, headphones, sound machines, but all of those kinds of things that can really get your body into like a, okay, this is so comfy in here. I feel like maybe I could go to sleep. Imagining all those things, like if I had this thing, that would help me go to sleep. So that's something I could recommend. And then let's get into the relaxation tips, because there's so many things that we can try to help our bodies just relax in general from the work of grief, as well as relax in preparing to go to sleep. There's tons of phone apps out there, tons. The Calm app is a great one. They have sleep meditation, sleep stories, sleep music. That's a really good one. If anybody would like that, email me. I can send you a free 7 days from my app if you want to try it. We've had Kath on here to talk about tapping. That's a great one to help you induce some sleep, release some stress. Tapping's also really good for all those anger type issues, can help sort of lessen the intensity of that. It sounds cliche, but really warm drinks at night tell our body it's time for sleep. It's great for a sleep routine, like a bedtime routine, telling your body, okay, I'm starting my bedtime routine now. I'm having a cup of hot whatever. If that's herbal tea for you. I know people who just do warm water and like honey, warm milk, whatever the warm thing is, but warm seems to help as long as it's not caffeinated to sort of set you back up for getting a little stimulated again. I also am an aromatherapist, so I would recommend, if you're going to try oils, the ones I personally recommend for sleep is lavender, vetiver. Marjoram is great for grief as well as sleep. It can help lessen the intense feelings that we get with grief and induce sleep. So that's marjoram. Valerian is amazing for sleep, but it smells really bad. So that's just a forewarning if you try valerian, and don't use more than a drop. But those oils, putting those in a diffuser next to us can really help create that environment, but also those oils have properties that can help our body relax and go to sleep. Progressive muscle relaxation is another one. Lots of that on phone apps that can take you through, you know, head to toe, relaxing your body as part of like a bedtime routine. There's a great type of yoga. We're actually going to have that in our newly widowed program, which is on Tuesdays. It's called Yoga Nidra, and it's known as yogic sleep. It's very, very relaxing. In fact, we had it in our last Camp Widow virtual, and many of the participants in the session went to sleep, and we sort of had to just close their room. But she's going to come, Beth, who does our Yoga Nidra for us, is going to come to the newly widowed program and do a session on that and actually take us through Yoga Nidra. But she also does a weekly Yoga Nidra session. And if you're interested, you can email me, mary@soaringspirits.org, and I can get you her free information. She has it's just for widowed people on Facebook. She does these free yoga sessions. Restorative yoga can also be really, really helpful as far as getting your body to relax. It's great to do at night as well, in the evening. Guided imagery is another good idea that can be part of, especially when you wake up and can't go back to sleep, doing some of the Calm app has also some guided imagery visualizations. If you haven't been into the Calm app, there are so many things in that app. I haven't even discovered them all. I didn't know there was guided imagery, but there is. That there's tons of free stuff on YouTube for all of these kinds of things. Another mindfulness exercise I was going to bring up is the five senses. And that's a really good exercise, not just for helping our bodies to relax for sleep, but also for grief in general, especially when you're having those very intense feelings. The five senses is super easy. You start with, okay, what's five things I can see? And you just look around, think five things I can see, four things I can hear, three things that I can feel right now, two things that I smell, and one thing that I can taste. And just going through that very quick exercise can bring you out of that intense moment, that overwhelming moment, and get your body to be in a more relaxed state. So it's also really great as you lay down in bed to go through those. Again, that's five things I can see, four things I can hear, three things I can feel, two things I can smell, and one thing I can taste. Another couple ideas is acupuncture and Reiki have been wonderful for people for sleep. So just to sum it up really quick, the main points we talked about are why we have trouble sleeping, what does it look like when we're really fatigued, what kind of common things do we all experience with a lack of sleep, and tips and relaxation techniques to help you get to sleep. So we're going to go ahead and end the recording. I thank everybody for being here, and if you have any questions, certainly feel free to email me. Thank you.